So what I want to do is start by telling a little bit about myself, and then I'll talk a little bit about the topic of the day, which is using charts and specifically T-charts. Now, I will tell you, I'm a big fan of charts just generally, and I could definitely talk for an hour about like charts. I could talk for many hours about charts, but they were like, Jen, you have to pick one chart. So I picked the T-chart, probably because it's super easy and because it's the kind of thing that most people already are familiar with. So, hey, Maria Rivero is there from Reno, Nevada. I love it. So a little bit about me. I myself am from Nevada. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, went to Reno for my undergrad, Vegas for my law school, ended up teaching at the law school in Vegas for about 10 years, moved to California to teach, and when COVID hit, moved over to BarMax. So work from home with BarMax, have the opportunity to continue teaching, continue helping folks prepare for the bar exam while working from home. And one of the really interesting, wonderful things about BarMax is that, you know, they've been doing this at-home bar prep for years. So super savvy with, you know, how to help folks prepare for the bar exam when we're all at home. So even as those COVID restrictions start to ease up, that's kind of their specialty. So if you are someone who is looking to, you know, I don't know, prepare for the bar and you're working, or you are needing a system that allows you to prepare while you are at home, this is probably a really good option for you. So with that being said, let me talk a little bit about myself and kind of my background. So like I said, born and raised in Nevada, ended up teaching in law schools for a number of years, came to BarMax from that. I am barred and licensed in Nevada and California, and I tutor for BarMax for California, Nevada, and the UBE, as well as first year courses. We also have a first year program, the first year bar exam, for those of you who are may know friends who are looking for that. And by the way, the T-chart method will work for those essays as well, and the MPRE. So it's kind of a jack of all trades. I love thinking about how people learn and think in law school and how they kind of use or portray what they know. So with that, let me tell you a little bit more about BarMax specifically. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to play it so it looks nice and big for you. So here's BarMax, about the T-chart system, and we're going to talk about different ways you can use a T-chart to help you be successful. So a little bit about BarMax. We do have a UBE program and a California program, which includes lectures, essays, performance tests, all kinds of flashcards. You can turn in your essays and get them graded, which is super useful. We also have tutoring, which is available. And like I said, I tutor for all those topics. And there are bundles, which allow you to do both. You can do, you know, hours of tutoring, and you can do the actual, you know, bundle in the packages. So there's kind of all of those things, all of that information. And I'll mention that again later, but the big thing to know is, hey, since you're here, you're getting 20% off of the costs via a code, which will be emailed to you later on. Second thing to know is, if you have questions, if you're like, Jen, can you show me how that would work in such and such topic? Or I haven't tried it this way, or I have tried it this way and it worked really well. Can you let folks know about that? Sure, put it in the Q&As, let me know. Otherwise, you can use your chats for, you know, saying hello to folks, or questions for each other, that kind of thing. So there you go. Today, in terms of T-charts, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about, like, what is it? I want to talk about how can you use it to get better at essays. We did get a question that came in last night. Are you going to use this to talk about MPTs? So the performance test. So for those of you who are taking a UBE jurisdiction, you know, we're not really using this. Today, we're not talking about specifically the multi-state performance test for those of you who are taking in California, the performance test for those of you who are taking in Nevada, the Nevada performance test. We're not really talking about that today. Now, we have done other sessions on the performance test. We do have resources available for that. This is just maybe a little bit more challenging technique to use. There are charting methods you can use for the PT, and I'm happy to talk about those, like book a tutoring hour. We can spend some time on that if that is something that you're like, heck yeah, I want to learn how to do that. But today, essays, MBEs, and we're going to use it to talk about sort of learning the law and organizing and issue spotting on the essays themselves. Okay. I am going to pause really quickly and just check the Q&A, because I just want to make sure there's not anything in there that I need to know right now. Oh, there's a question about what we offer for the baby bar. Gladys, I'll be happy to answer that in a bit. And for now, I'm going to move on to my next session or next slide. So, and I mentioned earlier, I really, really love charts. I just find them such a helpful way of organizing information. And I will tell you, I kind of went my whole law school career, and I was that person that was, people said, okay, Jen, you have to do an outline. And so, all right, you tell me I got to do it, I'm going to do it. So I'm trying to make these outlines, and I'm not very good at them, and I'm not finding them super useful, but I'm doing them, right? Like, people were like, Jen, you got to do it. I'm doing it. The end. But it's just not something that I'm excellent at. And I think the first semester that I was teaching at the school, my oldest son was in second grade, and I went into his classroom for his parent teacher conference, or maybe it was like open house, something like that. But I'm in his classroom with a bunch of other parents, and I look around, and along the top wall, there are posters, and the posters are all of these different kinds of charts. And I realized all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I could have been using those to organize all of these cases and concepts and ideas that I had been learning throughout my entire law school career. And so, hey, if you are one of those people who is in law school and you're in your first semester, or you wouldn't be in your first semester now, but you're in your second semester, or somebody who is, and you're like, how do I keep track of, so-and-so's dissent in this case, and the plurality and the majority and the minority? Charts can help you do that. How do I keep track of the progression of, the Commerce Clause? Charts can help you do that. And if you are preparing for the bar exam and you need to keep track of, lots of complex ideas, charts can help you do that. If you are writing an essay and you need to keep track of lots of factual statements and things that are happening, and it's just like, this long page-long story, and you have to apply the law to that, and how are you going to keep it organized? Charts is the answer. Charts is how you can create that. Today, as I said, focusing exclusively on T-charts, but there are all kinds of charts out there, guys. I'm happy to talk with you about ways to use other charts. Examples would be the continuum, kind of going either from biggest to smallest, or smallest to biggest, or earliest to latest, that kind of thing. You could also think about Venn diagrams. So where's the overlap? That can be helpful. You can think about things like cause and effect charts. So when this thing happens, then this, although honestly, a simple T chart can also do that for you. And so that's one of the reasons I did pick the T chart, is that it allows you to do a lot of what many of these other more complex charts do. I will also say, when I was doing my research for this presentation, and I was like, okay, what do I want to talk about the T chart? What are other folks doing with T charts? What ideas can I share with folks about the T-chart. I did come across, and I was thinking, what do I want to tell them about T-charts? One of the things that came up as I was looking at this is apparently it is a hotly debated topic amongst K-12 teachers if folks should be encouraged to print up little worksheets like this to do their T-charts, or if folks should just fold their papers lengthwise and simply do a T-chart on their own. And to be honest with you, that's something I actually love about T-charts. They're so simple. When I did my own T-chart, I tend to do, and I still do them sometimes, if I need to organize ideas or information. I will do, to be honest with you, I'm a, blank piece of paper person, right? And I'm just going to draw a line and we're going to go to town like that. I will sometimes use a whiteboard, like a tiny slate size whiteboard, that kind of thing. I've also from time to time used just a table or an Excel sheet or a Google Doc kind of thing to create a compare contrast chart. Occasionally, if I am teaching someone in a tutoring session, Zoom has this thing called a whiteboard, which also allows you to create a compare contrast chart. So super easy chart to find printables of or simply create on your own in a variety of different places, which to my mind goes to show how useful and versatile it is. So like I said, as I was researching and I was thinking, is there a really good way to kind of explain how these are used? I came across this, I kind of synthesized this definition, but I thought, it's useful because it kind of helps you guys think about, how would I use this chart? So one thing to think about it is it's a really good way to organize information. So let's say you are taking the bar exam in California and you need to keep track of not just the majority rule, but also the California distinctions. T-chart, same situation in Nevada. You need to keep track of not just the majority rule, but the Nevada distinctions. T-chart. Let's say that you need to keep track of the 4 different tests for insanity. What you're going to have there is a T-chart that has not just, the T, right? But maybe it's more like a hashtag, right? Because it's got, multiple lines. But hey, it's a way to organize that information. It's a way to compare similar but different concepts. It allows you to explore cause and effect. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And also to kind of think about putting your ideas into sort of main topics and then supporting topics. That line right there, so, main topics and supporting topics is what you're going to do when you're writing an essay. And if you have ever been told you're conclusory or you're not connecting the law and the facts well, T-chart, man, that's how you're going to fix it. You're going to start doing that T-chart. So T-charts for learning. What does that look like? This is one of my favorite ones. And I love it because it's something that everybody needs to know, right? It's kind of the, what's the distinction between spousal privilege and marital communications? And, depending on how your professor or your own way of thinking about this topic is, you'll hear it called different things. But, the idea is that one of these privileges covers, the spouses so that they're married, they don't have to testify against each other. And the other says, look, the only thing that's going to be covered is what you said while you were married. Okay. So you might have something like, starting with the purpose of the 2 privileges. So, the first, spousal privilege, the purpose of it is to, ensure harmony in the home, right? Make sure that we're not making someone testify against her spouse and now she's scared to go home. The other is, hey, marriage is sacred and we want people to be able to be honest with each other. And so we really want to make sure that anything they say to each other while they're married stays preserved. It's privileged. Then you can think about, okay, what about the endurance? Well, so spousal privilege is only going to last as long as the marriage. Because if we're worried about keeping people safe when they're married, they're not married anymore, doesn't matter. Oh, you know what? You guys, that's, my gracious. It says as long as they're married under marital communications, but it should say for forever under that one. So now I feel compelled to fix it, you guys, because what if you like write that down and then you there we go. Okay, we'll go back and we'll make it big again so that it makes sense. There we go. So marital communications last forever, right? We don't want anybody, worried about that. Hey, it's going to be, if you say something when you're married, it's staying protected forever. The length of time that it's protected. It doesn't matter if you said something before you were married, after once you're married, even if you said it before you were married, it stays protected. The period that's protected for marital communications is only the stuff that you said once you were married. What is protected? Everything, because you're just not going to testify against your spouse. Marital communications, it's only what is said, right? And then you can think about who holds. So this gives you a way to kind of organize those ideas. You could do this with lots of things. Like we said, you could do it with, test for insanity. You could do it with robbery versus larceny. You could do it with the types of murder. You could do it with, UCC versus distinctions versus, common law. Anything where there's that slight difference, you could play with it using a T-chart. So it really can help you kind of nail that down. And I tend to be a person where I'm going to hang it up, right? So I'm going to take that chart and I'm going to stick it places where I'm going to look pretty often. So maybe it's going to go above my coffee maker, or maybe it's going to go in my mirror and I'm going to brush my teeth and just, I'm half awake and I'm just staring at that chart, like brushing my teeth, maybe I'm going to put it above my desk where I'm going to look at it. Maybe I'm going to stick it on my fridge. But the idea is that you're trying to assimilate that information. So I'm going to pause there and just say, just take a breath, I guess, actually. If you have questions about like using T-charts for learning, this is a good time to ask those. And I will check the Q&A to see if they are there. So Gladys is asking what we offer for the baby barb, which I will answer later. Feel free to stick your questions about anything in there and I'll just answer them in a bit. Yes. So Jen caught me. Thank you, you guys. You guys are perfect. That is so great. I love that you caught that, you guys. Thank you so much for catching me on that. I love it. That's amazing. I was definitely typing too fast on that one. Okay. There we go. Okay. I love that you guys are, that you guys caught that. That's amazing. Good job for that. And don't apologize. Why are you apologizing? Okay. There we go. So the next question is, did I write forever for the spousal privilege? Duration. So yeah, so the duration for marital communications, yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you say it when you're married, that's it. You're protected. They cannot reveal that. But if you're not married anymore, that privilege, that spousal privilege goes away. Yeah, I apologize, you guys. I was so excited about T-charts and I was typing really fast and I I was thinking more about how excited I was about T-charts, and I should have been focusing on it. But look at how quickly you caught my error. And I'm going to point out that probably, the fact it was organized in that way made it probably helped that happen. Just going to say, I'm just going to totally claim that it was the miraculous T-chart that helped you catch it. Maybe not. You guys are probably just brilliant, but the T-chart helped highlight your brilliance. And speaking of T-charts helping you highlight your brilliance, as you're thinking about the T-charts for issue spotting. So this is something that folks will sometimes come to me with, and they'll say, Jen, I just feel like I'm not very good at issue spotting. This is just something that I am, it's just not my strong suit, right? Like, I'm good at a lot of things. Issue spotting is not one of them. Okay, how do we help you get better at that? And I'm going to tell you that generally issue spotting comes from two things. So one is your knowledge of the law, and the other is your knowledge of how the law is tested. So, part of that is just like, hitting the books, and part of that is thinking about how the law is tested. So as you're thinking about, hey, what do I want? How do I want to prepare? Like, what's the best way to prepare for the bar exam? One of the things that I'm going to suggest is anything that has any kind of program that has you looking at a ton of questions, doing a ton of questions, examining a ton of questions is going to be really important. And what you're looking for in terms of how the law is tested is what facts come up over and over and over again. What are the similarities? And I kind of say all the time, like probably to the point that people are irritated with me for saying it, that look, it's the same people that draft these questions. So I mentioned that I used to teach at a school in Nevada, and after I moved over to BarMax, Celeste had said, hey, do you know anybody who'd be really great to come tutor? And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy who used to be my assistant director would be wonderful. And so I called him up and I was like, hey, Michael, what are you up to? What are you doing? And he said, Jen, I'm writing questions for the National Conference of Bar Examiners. And I was like, oh, okay. And for those of you who are thinking, who the heck are the National Conference of Bar Examiners? They are the folks who write the MEEs, the MPTs, and the MBEs. So they are the folks who write the essay questions for the multi-state bar exam. They are the folks who write the multiple choice questions for the bar exam. And they are the folks who write the multi-state performance test, okay? So, when I tell you that the same people have been writing these questions for many years, it's true. So it's not just that there's only so many ways to test these things. And when you've looked at enough of these questions, you kind of just know that, when they're going to test dying declaration, someone is going to say something and then they're going to die. They're also going to, be unavailable, right? And then we're going to have to think about, like, is this the sort of unavailability that counts? That kind of thing. The idea is that, if you look at enough of these questions, you really get a sense of, like, these are the facts that come up over and over again. For those of you who are in a non-UBE state, let's say you're in California and you're like, that's great, but the only part of my exam that is going to be written by the national conference is the multiple choice portion. So, okay, what you want to remember is that the multiple choice portion is written by the national conference, but the essay portion is written by California lawyers who agree to serve on committees. It's even more of the same guys writing the same questions with the same issues and the same or similar facts over and over and over again. So if you look at enough of these questions, you kind of see this stuff come up again. Same thing in Nevada. So for those of you taking in Nevada, and I know they have decided this year, crossing our fingers, that they're going to administer the MBE, provided that things are in person, which is why we're crossing our fingers. Hey, again, same thing with the essay question. It's the same folks who've been serving on the bar exam committee for a million years. They're writing the same kinds of questions. So when people tell you, if you do enough questions, you start to see the pattern, what they mean is similar facts trigger similar issues across similar fact patterns. So T-charts can help you spot that earlier. And there's a way to do this more quickly. How do I do it? There we go. Okay, so one of the ways that we, oh, that was not what I meant to do. Okay, let me fix that. I'm sorry, guys. Hang on one second. How do I fix it? There we go. Okay. Just to give you some examples of what that might look like. So I was looking at the 2021 MEE, and I think it was July. I think both of these were in July, if I remember correctly. And there's a buyer who orders 100 shopping carts, and they get 60 shopping carts, and this dispute sort of follows up. And I'm thinking to myself, this is like very similar to the shopping cart or to another question that I have read. What's going on here? And I go back through, this makes me probably old school, but I actually have like printed out binders full of questions and answers and stuff. And I find the MEE from 2013, where the chef orders 10 knives, gets 6, and a dispute ensues. So you start to see that overlap. For those of you taking in, say, Nevada, I have seen them actually like use previous questions where they've just changed sort of names and maybe like the last paragraph introduces a new issue. I've seen similar situations in California. So, if you look at, for example, the February 2016 and February 2015 contracts questions, they're very, very similar. They're both, one is about services and one is about goods, but they're both about impossibility, impracticability versus impossibility. They both have issues of anticipatory repudiation. And so you start to look at it and you're like, okay, all we're doing here is changing a few key facts. So how do I learn what are the facts that raise these issues? And how do I speed up at it? How do I get faster at this? T-charts. So what is that going to look like? So what you're going to do is you're going to look at those facts and you're going to say, like, what are the things that I can draw from those facts? So now here, I've done this in a very simplistic way, but we have the fact that they ordered 10 and they got 6 in 2010 or 2013 rather. Saying 10 too much, versus in 2021, they ordered 100 and got 6. In 2013, they, examiner said, hey, can you establish that these are goods? So the UCC governs. In 2021, they wanted us to say that these are goods, so the UCC governs, okay? In 2013 and 2021, they pointed out that the quantity was not mentioned. So, the fact that and that they were both merchants, and the merchants used a merchant's confirmatory memo. And so sometimes you can take those similarities, just like, and maybe you wanted to put in, maybe you'd go back in here in these facts and you'd add, hey, they were both merchants. In fact, maybe we want to do that now, right? We did that for our other one. Maybe we want to do that now, right? Maybe we want to say this was a chef plus a knife dealer, right? Knife dealer. Maybe here we want to put this was a cart dealer and buyer. Okay, so hey, there you go. And you can go through and kind of look at that and say, what are the commonalities, right? How do I begin to recognize when somebody's a merchant? And it's easy to say, well, Jen, the rule is, they regularly buy and sell goods of these kinds. Sure, but what does that look like? How do I start to see that? by looking at enough questions, and you can speed it up by saying, hey, a chef, somebody who regularly buys and sells in goods of this kind, a cart dealer regularly buys and sells in goods of this kind, that kind of thing. Actually, let me go back and I'll say, any questions about the T-chart for issue spotting and like kind of using it to look at lots of questions and figure out kind of how you can tie them together specifically? Oh, still lots of questions about the slide. I'm so sorry, you guys. I will be happy to show it again at the end. You will also get a recording showing the corrected slide again. But for now, I'm wondering if it would be more useful to focus on kind of other, so that kind of, the whole point of that was not, hey, let's learn about spousal privilege and marital communications. It was more to say, hey, when you have disparate ideas, you can learn about them using a T-chart, right? So I'm wondering if it's more useful to think about that part of it, right? So, for example, maybe you take, let's see, what would be a good example of that? Where's my computer's like, how about no? How about no, I'm working today? There we go. So maybe, we could show, so I'm happy to show this one again, but let's just do another, do this, and let's do, instead of doing spousal privilege and marital communications, let's do, I don't know. Another idea that has disparate, I don't know, pieces. It's really big. Disparate concepts. So, and I'm trying to think about like what is another thing you need to know that has disparate ideas in it. Oh, you know what? I mentioned one. I said, let's do robbery versus larceny. So let's do it. So robbery versus larceny. Let's do that. Bring this one up. I don't know if we're going to need all 6 of that, but we can see. Oops, now it's like really skinny. You guys can see my poor like editing skills here, but okay. So robbery is the taking and carrying away. This is good though, because you can kind of see how to do a T-chart. That's okay. Of the property of another with intent to permanently deprive them thereof through force or threat of force. Just like we won't need this, I will delete it, and hopefully that will make this other one come up. It kind of does. Okay. And now it says, now you can see that I also can't spell. Okay. Larceny is the taking and carrying away of the property of another with intent to permanently deprive them thereof. Why do I care? Make it big again so you guys can see it better. Okay, why do I care? Well, hey, for one thing, you don't have to if you are writing a question about robbery versus larceny, and there's robbery and larceny in the question, and you have proved larceny, you can go through larceny. Larceny is the taking, carrying away the personal property of another with intent to permanently deprive them thereof. And then you can say, and There may also be robbery because there was force or threat of force, and you don't have to go through proving all of those elements again. Or if you're sitting there going, how do I understand that? Oh, see, now I made my hair all crazy. How do I understand the difference between robbery and larceny? Hey, it's force. It's that force or threat of force element. So it can help with kind of that learning as well as that other piece of it. So if you think about T-charts as a way of kind of helping you acquire new information, it can help. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's get to the issue spotting, which I'm seeing some folks say, like, can we go back to that? So absolutely. So if we look at the, if we think back to that essay question, and I wanted to show it to you. So let me go to it. So to do that, I go escape here. And then I can do pause, share. I go here. Oh, no, I want to go. I wanted to show one from California. Yep. Okay. So we talked about kind of getting better at issue spotting along the way, right? You're doing a ton of questions and you are looking at question, and you're like, hey, if I see chefs and I see shopping cart buyers and I see, people who buy fishing fish bait, and I see people who sell widgets and whatever, those are all merchants. Got it. And you're like, okay, I can start to see what this looks like. What about if you're in an essay? How do you organize this? And this is something that I actually do when I teach essay writing. This is something when I teach legal writing. I still adjunct at law schools and teach legal writing. This is something that I use. I use T-charts to help teach this. Oh, I got to make that big again. So this is a technique that I think is very useful. So what I would say, let me show you this one. So I wanted to show you the question. So I go to pause and then I go to self. And I do share again. There we go. Okay. So this is the question itself. This is from July of 2015, and it happens to be a personal jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, civil procedure, just your quintessential Civ Pro question. This is like the standard Civ Pro question. And if you go in here and you look at basically this paragraph and this paragraph, and I don't know, like maybe the first part of this question, this paragraph, what you've got there is all the facts you're going to need for Civ Pro, personal jurisdiction, and subject matter jurisdiction. And I think that it's really easy to look at that, and for me at least, to get overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, there are facts for, okay, so the implantation occurred in A, but also that's where doctor and patient live. And so then also the valve was designed in B. Okay, but then also it was incorporated in C, but wait a minute, headquartered in D. And like, okay, so there's 4 states in this thing. There's 4 states. How do I, okay. And it can be challenging to think about how you put it all together. All right. So let me just give you I'll give you a minute to look at the paragraphs. I want you to just take a look at those first 3 paragraphs. Don't worry about anything else. Just think about those first 4 paragraphs. And we're thinking about the issues of personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction. So I'm hoping everybody got a chance to read those first 3 paragraphs. If you didn't, again, do not worry. They're going to be available. You'll be able to look at the webinar and pause it and read it and all that. If you have BarMax, it's going to be available in your welcome packet. If you don't have BarMax, it's available. Or I guess even if you do and you don't want to look at your welcome packet, I pulled it from the State Bar website. So really easy to find. Okay, so then I do stop share. Sorry, guys, I'm still, what do you call it? Like a Luddite. I have to still do this. I will talk myself through it. All right, so then we're going to go here. And I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to edit as we go. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to use a T-chart. And they're actually pretty similar, but I just want to show you 2 different ways to do it. So one is to start with sort of what I would call the big issue or the main issue, which is just personal jurisdiction and then subject matter jurisdiction. So, and personal jurisdiction, it's just, here are all the facts that seem to go for personal jurisdiction. Here are all the facts that seem to go for subject matter jurisdiction. The first thing that I want to say is, first of all, notice that personal jurisdiction has more facts. That means that personal jurisdiction is worth more points. So students tend to act like every single issue is worth the same amount of points. That tends not to be true. You got to think about this as being a little bit of a give and take. So the fact, where the bar examiner is spending more time is where you want to spend more time. So if they're spending more time telling us about personal jurisdiction, you got to spend more time yourself. The second thing that I want to point out is that I end up using some of those facts twice. So for subject matter jurisdiction, I've got to show diversity, right? I got to show diversity or federal question. And so for diversity, I have to show domicile. I have to say, where do they live? Where are they domiciled? And that's also important for personal jurisdiction. So I'm going to use some of those facts twice. That's okay. You can totally do that. I'm going to add, oops, that's not what I'm going to do that, but that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to try it now. I'm going to add a column after now, and I'm going to do a sub issue. And so maybe now what I have is something like specific jurisdiction, because that would give rise where the incident occurred. So where the object was implanted. Maybe I'm going to give, maybe I'm going to talk about traditional jurisdiction, where domiciled, because that's where they live, right? Maybe I'm going to give, where action arose. And so maybe I'm going to move, to make this fit, maybe I'm going to move the implantation, because it could arise where it was designed or where it arose. We've got the fact they live, doctor and patient live in A, but now patient is going to go live indefinitely in B, right? So maybe that goes there. There's some way to make this one smaller, I think, and that would help, but I don't exactly know how to do it. But oh, there we go. Okay. Where these guys are domiciled. Let's move this up here because this is kind of the. So we could end up with something like that, where we have a specific jurisdiction kind of, oh, you know what? We got to move these up here with specific jurisdiction too. Right? Where now I'm able to say, hey, personal jurisdiction can arise in through traditional way or through, specific jurisdiction or through, minimum contacts. And really with minimum contacts, we got to go through all this stuff. So I would just throw it out there, right? For subject matter jurisdiction, maybe I would say something like, amount in controversy, because it's got to be over 75K. And maybe here I would say diversity, right? And you could even do another thing and do sub issue. And you could say traditional, oh, you guys, I switched those. See, I get so excited and I have to watch what I'm doing better. I bet somebody in the chat was like, Jen, there we go. Something like that, right? Yeah. We could do another, make it line up better. There we go. Well, I guess it's kind of lined up better, but you know what I'm trying to do there. Maybe we could do it like this. Maybe we could do like 1, 1, and then we could do 2, 2, and then we could do like 3, and 3 is like everything that's in there, something like that. So you could kind of think about like, okay, I could do the main issue, the sub issue, and the specific facts that arise from that issue, sub issue, and how they match up. And this is another way to help figure out like where the main time is, or where you want to spend the majority of your time. I am going to make this big again so that we can maybe see it a little bit better. I can see something in the chat. Let's see what it is. So Cassandra says, do you recommend doing this when testing? It'll help getting in and out of the question quicker. Yes, it will. But I will say it's definitely a skill you want to practice starting now if you haven't been doing it already, because it definitely is something that can take a little bit of time. And what it's really going to help, it's definitely going to help with the issue spotting. So it's going to help you see more issues. It's also going to help you be more organized in the way you bring it out, right? So what tends to happen when students see that issue of, oh my gosh, A and B and C and D and is they sort of word vomit. And I kind of jokingly tell people that when they write their essay, I always want them to imagine that I'm the one that's grading it. And I've got 3 kids and I foster kittens as like my hobby / good deed in the world. So half the time there's like a kitten crawling on me. And my kids are teenagers now, so they're like loud and trying to turn on the TV, and I'm yelling, I'm trying to work. And so I want you to make it easy for me to find what you're talking about. And so any device that allows you to present your information in a more organized format means it's easier for me to give you the points. So if you can use a T-chart to give your grader an easier way to find and award you points, the better off you're going to be. Okay. So the last thing, I said we would do this if we have time, and I think we do, so I'm going to do it really quick. So the most often time that people are told, hey, we want you to use the MBE, think about learning the pattern, learn the language of the MBE. Think about, do enough questions and you'll just start to see what they're testing, is with the MBE, with the multiple choice portion of the bar exam. Really what we're trying to do here is, like we said, there's only so many ways to test this stuff. So there's definitely a certain amount of just do these questions to get a sense of how these issues arise, right? There's only so many ways that these issues can come up. And then I also would say there's also a certain amount of trying to get a sense of what the bar examiners think is the right answer. So, I'll give you an example. I am forever bitter that there was a question on my that I was practicing with way back in the day, 17 years ago, when I was preparing for the bar exam. And I was doing this question, and the question said that the person had drunk 6 beers and then got on the bus and mistakenly picked up someone else's bag and carried it off. And then I said that they were not guilty because they were intoxicated and they lacked sufficient intent, specific intent. I said sufficient, but I meant specific. And the correct answer was that they were not intoxicated because merely drinking 6 beers is not enough to indicate that they were intoxicated. And I was like, have you drunk 6 beers? Because I feel like people would be pretty freaking intoxicated after they had had 6 beers. But part of what we are doing as examinees is not learning what the right answer, like big voice from on high, the right bar answer is. We are learning what the people who write the exam think the right answer is. And so if they think that you can drink 6 beers and possibly still be sober, and that the only way to know if someone is intoxicated is if they are slurring their speech or stumbling, we got to know that. So part of what we're doing is we're just trying to figure out what are the facts that show us what the bar examiners is sufficient, right, to show intoxication. If we're looking at, habitability, this is another one that comes up, that warranty of habitability. When has it been violated? To me, if I've got, a house with 2 toilets and one of those toilets stops working, that house has become uninhabitable. Now I will say I have, 4 to 5 people in my home at any time. But, so, and let me tell you, with 4 to 5 people and they're teenagers, right? The amount of time that I spend like knocking on the door to the bathroom and saying, will you please hurry up? I need to pee. The idea that one of those toilets would not work and my home would still be habitable is just absurd to me. But doesn't matter. I'm in their world. I just live in it, right? So if they say, hey, one toilet is all we need for habitability, you just need to remember that. On the other hand, you got some mold in it, uninhabitable. The end. That's what they say. Mold equals uninhabitable. Another one that trips people up, and I intentionally left this blank because I want you to practice with it. I want you to give it a try, is knowledge of right and wrong. So, we think about the Monotone test. So that's that traditional test for insanity in criminal law. Does the defendant know the difference between right and wrong? And a lot of times what happens is you've got the defendant out doing things, and the examiners will say, well, he did such and such, which shows he had knowledge of right and wrong. And you're like, that does not show that he had right and wrong, knowledge of right and wrong. But remember, we're not looking for the objectively right answer. We're looking for the objectively right answer to the bar examiners. So you're just going to write down, hey, somebody remembering to say please and thank you indicates knowledge of right and wrong. And so I'm just going to remember, if I see someone using please and thank you, then he has knowledge of right and wrong. The end. And I see in the chat, some folks are saying like, oh, this is really subjective. It can be, right? Which is fine on an essay because you can argue it both ways, and you should argue it both ways. But on the MBE, where you have to try to pick what they think is the right answer, just having a T-chart where you keep a running list of, okay, these are the facts that seem to indicate this issue, particularly if it's an issue you missed, can help you overcome that, right? But you do have to, even reluctantly, let go of that sense of like, okay, but it's a multiple choice exam. It's supposed to be objective. It's not, right? It's what they think is the right answer, and we just got to go with it. Okay. I just wanted to mention again, the tutoring and the courses, the comprehensive courses themselves. As I mentioned, having plenty of questions is the key. There we go. Let me go back here, and because I saw somebody had a question about that. So So Alexander says, what's the best way to learn what they think are, yeah. So Jorge says, don't focus on minutia focus on strategy. And I agree, right? So, what's the best way to learn right and wrong? Go through, as you're going through your multiple choice, and you see a question where it's about, did the defendant know what was right or wrong? And he does something, and the question says, hey, he was right. He wasn't insane because he knew right from wrong. I want you to write that fact down. Hey, the fact he said, please and thank you, shows knowledge of right and wrong. The fact that he heard God talking to him shows he did not know right from wrong. That kind of thing, right? And maybe you're going to have some other issue that you struggle with. Maybe for you, it's negligence, right? And you're like, how the heck am I going to know negligence? Or, here's one, unforeseeability. Actually, we can, how do I? Okay, so let's say we want to do a new, how did I do that? Earlier, I was like, it's so easy. You can do it just on a computer. But okay, so let's say we do unforeseeability. So words that they tend to use to indicate unforeseeability. How about surprise or unexpected? Right? So as you're doing these multiple choice questions, go through and say, and you can do it with essays too, but it's just, there's more multiple choice questions just by the nature of them. And so it'll stand out more as you go through. Just, hey, okay, to me that was foreseeable, but to them it wasn't. And what facts are there that I'm supposed to be picking up on that was supposed to tell me this was unforeseeable? Okay, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to look at our chats. So Fritz, hi Fritz. Fritz asks, will the charts be available to download? I think there's a way to send is there, Katie, am I right that there's a way to send this in the chat? There's a way to send is there a way to send the actual slides in the chat? Oh, Katie's going to answer for us in a second. And I'm so sorry, I'm probably not going to say your name correctly. I apologize. Upile says, just to clarify, which state are you referring to for the essay frequently tested topics? Is it a UBE or non-UBE state? Can you share some examples from UBE jurisdictions, particularly related to the UBE chart for issue spotting? So I actually used both. So the knives versus grocery cart example was from a UBE jurisdiction. So it was using an MEE, which is the multi-state essay exam, one part of the UBE jurisdiction. And then I mentioned, hey, if those of you who are taking in California, if you look at the February 2016 and February 2015 contracts questions, those also have significant overlap. They involve one is a services contract between builder and dirt who are trying to get their lot graded, and the other is a sale of goods contract with a guy who wants to buy a fishing bait fridge. But both involve impossibility, impracticability, frustration of purpose, anticipatory repudiation. Was there even a contract? Those kinds of super similar overlap. Yeah. So Victor says, if you have elements for larceny on the fact pattern, but not for robbery because there was no force used, do you write on both or just say robbery doesn't apply because there was no force used? Or do you just not write on robbery because all the elements are not presented in the fact pattern? That's a great question, Victor. And I'm going to say that I'm going to give you a lawyer answer, and I'm going to say it depends. So I'm going to say if there's no force used, but you have some facts to say that there was no force used, right? Let's say that the facts tell you that the defendant, who didn't want to scare or threaten the plaintiff, very carefully removed her, ordered her to remove her purse and hand it to him. You might say, briefly, robbery would not apply here because robbery requires force or threat of force. And here the facts tell us that he did not intend to scare her, which shows no threat of force. And he was very gentle, which shows no actual force. If the facts just give you nothing, right? Like the person wasn't even there and they grabbed the purse and run off. The victim wasn't even there and they grabbed the purse and run off. I wouldn't talk about robbery at all. So the distinction is if you have some facts to show there's no force or threat of force, you need to explain why those facts show that. If you have no facts at all about robbery, you wouldn't mention robbery. But you wouldn't want to spend a ton of time on it unless there were facts for it. Tamara's question is, will you show, or where can I see how this essay answer would look with issues and sub-issues set out? Whew, Tamara, that's a great question. I have not done the whole thing with the issues and sub-issues set out, like with a T-chart or anything. There is a model answer available there. So that one is the California July 2015 Civ Pro answer. And you will be able to access it that way. So you can see kind of how they answered it, if that's helpful. And I would say, if you want to give it a shot, you could write it and, schedule a meeting and a tutoring meeting, and I'm happy to look at it with you. You also could write it and just compare what you have to what's in the model answer and see if it matches, basically you can use this T-chart as a way to outline an essay that's not your traditional outline. I hope that helps. In a typical exam situation, how long should one take to draw up the T-chart for MEE essays whilst knowing we only have 30 minutes for each essay? Great question. So the typical advice is that you want to spend about a third to a quarter of your time, or a quarter to a third, there we go, of your time writing and organizing your question. So my advice, and I tend to be on the higher end of that, I tend to think that particularly, and this sounds counterintuitive, but particularly if you are someone who feels like you are rushed for time all the time, taking a little extra time to organize your answer. Again, I know it sounds counterintuitive. You're like, Jen, I don't have time to answer the question. Don't tell me to think so much. You want to, take some extra time to think about it. So I would say for you, I would say 10, if you're more of a person where it takes you, a second to figure things out as you're like reading that question, I would say 10 minutes. If you're someone who's usually you're on it, maybe 8 minutes, but general rule of thumb would be 8 to 10 minutes. And I would say during that time, you want to start with the call of the question, and the MEE questions tend to have very specific calls. Tell us about this, tell us about that, tell us about this other thing. Then I would read the whole question and like sit on your hand, and don't, look at anything, just read it for the story. Then I would second read through, get my pen out and start outlining, or if you're going to T-chart. Then I would write my whole essay, and I would try to save a minute or two at the end to just make sure that everything that you meant to include in the essay got included. Because I have definitely had those moments where I've been like, oh, I want to talk about blah, blah, blah thing. And then I forgot. So there's that. So Fritz had asked, will the charts be available to download? And Katie says, the slides are not available, but everyone is going to be getting a recording of the webinar via email. And it's going to be up in BarMax and the TestMax YouTube page. So that's the answer on that one. Gladys has asked, what do you offer for the baby bar? And do you do IRAC tutorials for the various subjects? So for the baby bar, we do have baby bar questions and answers. We do offer the 10 critiques. We do have tutoring. We do have lectures. So it's really very comparable to what we do for, the big bar, right? The big bar. And, we do offer tutoring as well. So definitely, have met with folks and done like, hey, write an essay, edit, let's talk about it. Let's discuss it, both substantively and then also in terms of the writing and making sure that you're using, your IRAC and that things are sort of where they need to be. Trying to think if there's anything else unique to the baby bar. No, I really think it's very similar to it. You can also poke around on the website and everything's available there too. So if you're like, well, what do you, okay, Jen, you offer the same things that you do for the big bar. Like, what is that? You can poke around on there too. Oh, I'm so glad, Victor. That's really helpful. I'm glad. So Tamara says that was helpful. I'm glad, Tamara. And, like I said, I think, maybe it feels frustrating to be like, why? Well, just show me like how it worked. But I will say, I think, this is the teacher in me, right? Doing the, taking that sample, just like how we did the first issue. And then we added this for those, and then you may be like me where you're just like, I just want the big issue and then the facts. Or if you're a little bit more of an organized person, you're going to do the issue, the sub issue, and the facts. And then comparing it to the model answer may be the most effective way to practice this skill, just in terms of like, okay, how am I going to do this when the actual exam comes, and get good at doing it for myself. So yeah. Okay. I'm just scrolling through the chat just to see if there's anything in there that I didn't answer or see in the Q&A. And if you did ask anything in the Q&A that I didn't see, you should feel free to drop it. No, I'm sorry, reverse that. If you asked anything in the chat that I didn't see, you feel free to go ahead and ask it in the chat. So Jorge asked, are there other webinars available for this topic? So not for this topic, but there are other webinars available. Definitely check out the YouTube page. They're also available on BarMax. If you're a BarMax student, we also have office hours, which are kind of like these webinars, but specific to, they're specifically available to BarMax students. So webinars are available to everybody. Office hours are like this, but available to BarMax students. Webinars are available on YouTube. Office hours are available here. Christina asked, could we quickly do one for an evidence essay? Sure, I'm happy to do that. So T-charts are so Ransom asks, and I love your name, by the way. It sounds like very, I don't know, you sound like a TV lawyer. Are the T-charts billed separately, or are they included with the BarMax course? So T-charts are meant to be a strategy that you would develop on your own and kind of use to outline your own essays. I mean, that's an interesting idea. Maybe we would someday, do a T-chart here or there that people could download to get an idea of what they look like. It's a good idea. We don't have them yet, but one of the great things I think about BarMax is that it's definitely got that startup atmosphere and the like, hey, that's a great idea. Let's take it and run with it. So maybe so. Ooh, Sherry, I got so excited. I messed up your name there. Sherry, can you throw that in our Q&A? Because I want to answer that and it'll be easier for me to keep track of it in there. So I'm going to do Christina's first though, which is, can you show us how to do a T-chart for the evidence essay really quick? So give me 1 second here, Christina. Because because I got to grab an evidence essay super quick. And for this, you guys, I've tried to use everything that like anybody could find. I am going to go to my BarMax materials for this, just because BarMax sorts everything by topic. And so I can go in and say, hey, let me find just the evidence questions, and that's going to make it a little bit quicker for me. But these questions are also available on the website, on the State Bar website. It's not like I'm using super secret evidence questions that you can't find. You'll still be able to find them. It's just, I'm going to grab it from here. So FYI. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to make this, I want to make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay. And then I think I can, if I move, is there a way to do this? How do I do this? Yes. Okay. Look at me. Practically like a computer genius now. Katie is laughing because that is like so far from the truth. I'm not a computer genius. I'm like the least computer savvy person. Okay. Then let me go here. We'll add a slide. We'll put it right here. And we'll put it right there. Oops. So I'm not going to be able to do the whole like thing, right? But I'll do some of it, and that'll at least get you going, right? Okay, so then if I move this smaller, how do I make that go away? There we go. And okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. And then if I go here and I do share screen, desktop, is that what I do? Yeah, desktop. Oops. So can you guys see the question and the little evidence thing, T-charts, essay, sub-issue, facts thing? Okay. Yay. Okay. So, as I would go through, the first thing that I would see is like, hey, super simple, right? Federal court, sub-issue is none. Oops. Sorry, facts is federal court. And Sherry had actually asked, should we go from, Jen, why are you going from issue to sub-issue to facts rather than facts to sub-issue to issue? And I think you could go either way. Totally up to you. I don't know. I just tend to go from the issues to the facts, but you could go the other way, right? But so as soon as I see that he's suing in federal court, I'm like, oh, I got to apply the federal rules. So this happens to be a California essay that I pulled. So I know UPLA was saying, hey, what about, don't forget us UBE folks, but we did look at that question, those two questions that involved the chef's knives and the grocery cart. And so now I'm looking at a California question. Okay. So he's driving through his car through an intersection. It's the green light's in his favor. When he enters the intersection, Aaron, the employee of Donna's Pizza, is driving a company van, ran a red light, collided with his car. He sustained serious injuries as a result and was taken to the hospital. So just kind of the way that my brain is working, I'm seeing that Aaron, that they're an employee, he's driving a company van, he runs a red light. And I'm thinking, you know, some kind of issue around like employees. No, I don't know. Because I've done this question a lot, we're going to skip the next essay and the next paragraph. And we're going to say that Erin testifies that she had the green light and it was Pete who runs the red light. Donna, the owner of Donna's Pizza, testified that Don's Pizza was not responsible. And Aaron says, I was in a hurry to make the pizza delivery. That's why I ran the red light. That's in that very final, what's that, 5th paragraph. So we've got an issue here of, I would say, what do we want to say? Statement of a party opponent, and agent. And so we need to like go through first, like, was E the agent of D? And then, if so, was she within the scope of her duties? So then I would put over here, hey, she is an employee. Duty to deliver pizza. She driving a company van. He says not responsible. Right. So I might go through something like that and try to come up with a situation like a thing like that. And then, maybe I also will want to include her statement, right? Hurry, so ran red light. Something like that. And hey, by the way, like, one of the things I'm trying to do here is, if you've heard that advice, like, use every fact, I'm trying to put every fact in there. I said one, but an employee. So you can do something like that. And that is, whoops. Yeah, so Eric agrees with Sherry, maybe start with the facts and then do the sub issue and then do the issue. I agree, totally could do that. I think one of the things you want to do is practice. One of the whole reason to like do this yourself is to figure out what you like and don't like. I don't know, in my head, I think maybe just because this is like what I've been doing for 15 years. In my head, I'm like, oh, this is a statement of a party opponent. What are the facts that go with that? But it might go the other way where maybe it's really more like, really, honestly, it probably is the facts that are making me think statement of a party opponent, right? So maybe I should go facts, sub issue. Just figure out what works. So Miriam, it was February of 2017. So Maynard asks, do the states have bar exam waivers for someone who has practiced law for over 19 years overseas? Definitely want to check with your state bar exam. Definitely want to check with them. So we did that for you, Christina. Jorge, yes. So the tutoring sessions are done through Zoom. So you can book your tutoring sessions, you pick your tutor, you can kind of like read a little bit about us, you pick your tutor, and then we meet with you pick your time. You meet with us over Zoom, and we can talk you through all kinds of things. So we can talk about essay writing, we can talk about MPT writing, we can talk about how you're doing on the MBE, we can work with you on substantive issues. So we can talk about, particular, areas of the law. So just let us know. So Sherry had asked, why do you start with the issues versus the facts? And same thing Eric had pointed out. And like I said, I tend to go I think just in my head, I go issues first, like just in my head, I'm like, oh, it's a statement of a party opponent. That's why they're putting that there. But I think you could go other ways as well. So I honestly think like whichever works better for you. I don't know that there is a better, I just do it that way. But I think you could go facts, sub-issue, issue just as well. And maybe I would go facts, sub-issue, issue if I had a situation where I had some facts and I was like, what are these facts here for? like, I know I have to use them, but I don't know what they're here for. So I'm just going to go like issue, facts, whatever, that kind of thing. Miriam, yes. So February 2017. There we go. Ransom, it is by the hour, but I believe there are like all kinds of specials if you buy packages. So I think you can get like pretty significant discounts. Yeah. So. Yeah, thank you for asking that, Sherry. That's, whatever you, I mean, it's a great question, and one I would not have thought about, but yeah. And look, guys, if what you're really worried about is like, hey, how are my essays? As a reminder, you get 10 essay critiques just through the BarMax package. And you can also buy those separately and buy more of them. So if you just want some written feedback, like that's also a choice, and you can get, like I said, 10 just through your BarMax pack just by buying the program, and then you can also get additional of those. So, sometimes folks, will want to talk about it and say like, hey, this is what I did, and can you show me how to change that? And we do that in tutoring, but you can also just get some written comments through the critiques as well. And just, I know Gladys had said, hey, what do you do for Baby Bar? And I had said, oh, all the same things. FYI, we do that for Baby Bar as well. Oh, so Maribel says, do you do the rules or the facts? Rules. So you're going to say rules, and then I don't ever want you to just tell me the facts. Like, don't tell me like, hey, so, let's just take that super simple, like they're in federal court, right? So maybe your rule is when you're in federal court, you should apply federal rules. So there's your rule. And then don't tell me here, Pete is in federal court. No, that doesn't get you any points, because that's just what it says. Tell me what that means. Here, Pete is in federal court. So he should apply federal rules. Like, give me like why those facts matter. So every sentence after your rule sentence should have a little bit of facts and a little bit of law that are held together with a word that connects them, like because or since or so, that says like, these are why these facts matter. But great question, Maribel. So TK says, how many essays should I practice for the UBE? And I'm going to say you want to do as many as you possibly can. And if you can't fully write them out, always good to do an outline. And the T chart can substitute for that outline. If you're not the traditional outliner, you can substitute, writing a nice solid T chart. But honestly, TK, I would say you want to do a couple from each subject so that you have a sense of like, this is how these facts come up. This is how this issue is tested. Oh, I'm so glad it's helpful, Victor. All right, guys. Well, oh, no, maybe there is one more question. Okay. So Michael says, with time allotted, what is the length of an essay? So you know what, Michael, I have seen model answers that are a page and a half. And I have seen model answers that are 12 pages. So, it really is more about the quality of your writing than the length of your writing. What I will say is you need to use all your facts. You need to incorporate any potential counter arguments, and you need to mention all of the relevant rules. And for most people that, unless you are a very succinct writer, that does take up a certain, some number of pages, right? So what you may want to do is poke around on your jurisdiction's website, take a look at their pages, and get a sense of, how long are most of them. Yeah. So Ames says, how are sub-issues transitioned into an essay? That's a great question. So we looked at that sub-issue of, is Erin actually the agent of Donna's Pizza? And if she is the agent of Donna's Pizza, was she within the scope of her employment when she caused the accident? So, I would start off with what I would call the big rule, which is, a statement of a party opponent, is excluded from hearsay and can be admitted against them. And that includes the statement of that party opponent's agent. An agent, would include, for example, an employee. And then I would say, my technique would be to apply that right away. Here, Donna or Erin is an employee of Donna's Pizza. We know that. Therefore, she is likely an agent. There's no question about that part, like that she is an agent. We're done. However, and then I would move into my next sub issue. There may be a question as to whether she is whether she was within the scope of her employment when delivering the pizza. Donna will likely argue that her company is not responsible because Erin was speeding, which is illegal, However, the better argument is that Erin was within the scope of her employment because she was speeding to make the pizza delivery on time, which is an action to benefit her employer, and she was driving the company time and doing her job when the accident occurred, something like that. The other way to do it is to kind of give all of your rules at once. So, statement of party opponent is admissible. So is statement of their agent. And you're an agent if you're an employee, but you may be acting outside the scope of your employment. And if that happens, then you're not an agent for that moment and it's not admissible. Kind of give your whole big rule lump and then apply all of that in another big rule lump. My worry with that, at least for myself and sometimes for my students, is that some of us, wow, here's all the rules. And then we forget to apply all of them. And then we miss some points. So for me, it works better to kind of just keep going with okay, here's what the counter argument is going to be. It's going to be based on this exception or sub issue. But again, the reason that it's April and you guys are getting started early. And the reason you're doing that is to have that, moment to play with it. So yeah, great job. So Maribel asks, what's the average score of the model answers? So that is going to depend on your jurisdiction. So different jurisdictions have different ideas about, what kind of answers they're going to pass. So, okay, so California tends to pass the highest scoring model answer. So this is a high scoring answer. Generally, not necessarily the highest, but one of the very highest that is contains sort of usually the typical issues that people are discussing. You could contrast that with something like Nevada, which says we are picking representative good answers. It's like, hey, they're representative, but they're also just good answers. And you can also look at, I don't know, some of the UBE states will just post answers that passed, like these are passing answers. So you definitely want to poke around on your individual state's page and see like, hey, what are, what type of answers are we posting here? Generally, it's going to be, California, in particular, it's going to be like, hey, these are the highest answers that discussed the most typical type of issues. But sometimes, you look at those answers and you'll be like, this one particular paragraph is a little out there. I'm pretty sure this wasn't something that needed to be discussed. So, that's why they post two. So Marion asks, do we have to cite relevant cases and statutes? No, you do not. No, they're not generally going to give you a higher score. There are some cases you should know by name, like you need to know Miranda. You should be able to say what the Miranda warnings are. You should be able to say what a Terry stop is. You should be able to say what the lemon test is. So things like that, where the case name has worked its way into our common discussion of what the law is, you should know what those names are, but you don't need to cite them. If you happen I wouldn't say knowing the cases is knowing the citations is going to help you. But if you can work a case name in, it's not going to hurt you, but I wouldn't spend a ton of time on it. If you notice that they're cited in the point sheets, so if you're in a UBE jurisdiction and you're looking at those point sheets and you're like, but Jen, the point sheets from the National Conference of Bar Examiners have those, sites in there, so shouldn't my answer? No, the reason the point sheets have them in is because they they're distributed to the states, and the states get to decide, is this actually how do we want to score this? And they get to check the work of the national conference, and they can go look up, are you sure that's what that case said? So the national conference gives them the site. So that's why it's in there, but they don't expect you applicants to actually have all that. They don't have that. Carlos says, would you suggest making charts during the examination? Yeah, if I'm in an essay, I'm making a chart. So left-hand side, for me, left-hand side is going to have the issues. And I'm going to be like, why did I think there was an issue of, a statement by a party opponent in here? And then I'm going to be like, okay, here's all my facts that made me think that. And that just helps me stay organized. So yeah, I tend to do it in the exam as well. And then, yeah, I also use it before the exam to help me sort of learn material. And then also, when I'm doing the MBE, to kind of stay focused on what do they think are the facts that show, unforeseeability or whatever it is. Bonita says, it's been several years since I finished law school. I need to deeply review the black letter law. How should I go about doing that? Oh, man. So I would say definitely start with, the outlines and lectures. And then it's really about, it's really about kind of working through the questions, and as many questions as you possibly can do. And I would say, think about it as happening in kind of 3 cycles. So your first cycle through is just about getting acquainted with it again. It's just about, wait a minute, anticipatory repudiation. What was that again? I sort of remember hearing those words, but that was a while ago. What is, a taking by zoning regulation? What was that? And just kind of remembering what those terms even are. And then your second cycle is more about understanding. It's more about okay, so zoning regulation, taking by zoning regulation is when a property is rendered, essentially valueless. And we're going to look at the owner's, reasonable expectation-backed, investment-backed expectation. And we're going to look at the, county's, or the state's, the government's reason for engaging in this regulation. And okay, here's a question where I can practice applying that. And that's going to make the bulk of your study time. And then at the end, you're just memorizing. But you're going to be surprised how quickly it comes back to you. You're going to be surprised. So Deirdre says, what about the MPT? And I'm going to say, Deirdre, the MPT is its own special animal. There are ways to chart for the MPT, but we definitely not something we can talk about today. We do have some office hours on the MPT. And if you're a BarMax student, you're welcome to look at those. If not, I would say start with your task memo questions, then read the whole task memo, then go to your library and read the statute, then the cases, then read the file. That whole process should take you 45 to 50 minutes, then read the library. So that's my like 30-second, then write. There we go. That's my 30-second like cover of that. Maribel says, if you're running out of time during the essay, what would you recommend? So I would say you are one of those people where you should be taking at least that 1/3 of the time to outline and organize, okay? You really need to make sure that anything you're writing about, you are spending your appropriate amount of time on to talk about, right? So you really, really want to make sure that you are writing about what needs to be written about, and you're not wasting any time at all. So for you, that planning and organization is even more important. So I think you said you're taking in California, so you really should be at least 20 minutes in like reading and organizing your question. And I know that feels counterintuitive because you're like, Jen, I am running, you're not listening to me. I'm running out of time. I know, but I want you to run out of time on stuff that's not important. I don't want you to run out of time on stuff that is important. And so one of the things I would suggest to you is that not everything on the exam is important or as important as everything else. So yes, there are some issues that are really, that are there that you could talk about, but not every issue is worth the same amount of points. So really make sure that you are focusing your time on what is most valuable. And that's going to be where the majority of the facts are. So really think about, using that planning time effectively. Bernice says that she finished law school many years ago and she's preparing to pass the California bar. I think that's great. We've got a couple of people in the same boat as you. They mentioned in the chat. I would say, really think about, taking some time and getting just reacquainted with the material. Like we said, just kind of what are the terms, like how do these things work, figure out what the vocab is, listen to the lectures, review the outline, and then get through that, get into and I would say don't dwell in that quite a lot, just kind of let it wash over you, kind of think about it as a kind of a meet and greet. And then dig deep when you get to your second cycle of reviewing that material, which is more about understanding. And it's about really like, okay, so zoning regulations, how does it work? Let me answer some questions about that. And working through that. And let me figure it out if I really understand how to apply all this. And then going forward from there. Kind of then in the last little bit, focusing on the memorization piece. All right, you guys, I can see that questions seem like they're slowing down, although every time, as soon as I say that, if you guys start asking more questions, but I actually do have a tutoring session in a little bit, so I am gonna let you go. So I see that there's one more question in the Q&A and I will take that, but then I am going to let you guys go. And I appreciate your time and attention. I'm glad this was exciting. I'm glad you guys are engaged. It's wonderful. It's great for me to be giving, a webinar and having folks here and asking questions and having people, excited, because that's exciting. It's exciting for me, obviously. But I do have to go in a second here. Oh, it's not even a question. It's a thank you. You're very welcome, Maribel. Oh, it's another thank you. You're very welcome, Ames. So yeah. Yay. Oh, I'm so glad. You guys are so sweet. Oh, this makes my day. Well, like I said, and not everything that you hear during the bar is going to be valuable for everybody. But, like I said, I would give it a shot, right? So give it a shot, see if you like it. Try the T-chart. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. There's no magic in it. You can always try something else. Just see if it works, And, like Eric and Sherry pointed out, maybe you're not an issues, sub-issues, facts person. Maybe you're a facts, sub-issues, issues person. Okay, try it that way too. All right, everybody. I will talk with you later.